Island Fever. Understanding LGBTQ lives in Puerto Rico through media's lens. Content warning. This essay contains homophobic and transphobic slurs. The importance of representation cannot be understated. Media reflects the social climate of society, and through camera lenses, we can further examine culture in a literary and visual sense. Puerto Rico's LGBT community is ready to kick the door down. It expresses the importance of a fictional character which inspired a young gay person. Documentaries, such as Memories of a Penitent Heart and Mala Mala, offer the stories of real LGBTQ Puerto Ricans struggling to maintain their legal personhood in the face of oppression. These narratives have an impact on the audience, which leaves them with both a better understanding of Puerto Rican culture and the lives of those featured within them. Many of the protections for LGBTQ Puerto Ricans come from the United States government and receive little public support. It is especially difficult for trans and gender non-conforming Puerto Ricans to advocate for themselves and their rights on the island, which only less than 1 year ago began allowing transgender citizens to change their birth certificates. These legal issues have been expressed by LGBTQ Puerto Ricans in media such as the documentaries Memories of a Penitent Heart and Mala Mala, which offer an insightful look into the community and its struggles in a territory often cast in the shadow of the mainland. Memories of a Penitent Heart is a 2016 documentary by director and writer Cecilia Alderando about her deceased uncle Miguel, who passed away in 1987 due to the AIDS-related complications. It includes the unique perspectives of Miguel's friends and family in order to unravel the story of his life while exposing the complexities of his relationships. The film offers an intimate look inside of Alderrando's family, which reveals the vulnerable aspects of her relatives, culminating in a narrative which is undeniably intimate in nature. When Miguel left Puerto Rico and moved to New York, he sought out a career on Broadway. His thoughts on his departure from the island in which he grew up can be found in an unpublished manuscript titled
Island Fever. I guess that's a diagnosis. From my case, I know it's not on your regular list of tropic diseases, as Sondheim is so fond of saying. But I understand it now. It's that feeling that creeps up on those who have known wider spaces, or long to do so. It is a fear that one's brain will be surrounded by water if one stays here too long. Those who are not natives and catch island fever either leave and return to the mainland and become alcoholics. Those who are expect a fate worse than death. They move to New York.
Miguel was describing the claustrophobia he felt while living in his hometown in Puerto Rico, where he felt constrained artistically and emotionally. He writes that non-natives will regret moving to the island, and worse, the natives themselves will grow depressed from the atmosphere within the boundaries of a 3,515-mile island, 3 times the size of Rhode Island. He ultimately decides to move to New York City, to broaden his horizons and to escape familial persecution. It's not clear if Miguel's relationship with his mother Carmen had anything to do with his departure. However, it is apparent that Carmen strongly believed that homosexuality was a sin. Carmen's radio show, Light of Christ, gave her platform to share her thoughts and preach her interpretation of religion. She speaks, "Help me, Lord. I'm living in a world full of mistaken ideas, where the truth is mixed with lies. Vice is disguised as virtue. Confusion reigns everywhere." This brings about the question, was this Carmen's public response to a letter she received from her son shortly before? "Dear Mom, desperate and anxious, I asked to talk to a priest. This profession, the theater, is so full of temptation, and the devil is so active that sometimes I see myself weaken." A possible interpretation of Miguel's letter and Carmen's broadcast is that Miguel was tempted to act upon pursuing gay men, and Carmen seemed aware of this struggle. Carmen's broadcast also suggests that her advice to her son wasn't received well. Instead of sharing how there is hope in resisting temptation, she preaches that mistaken ideas, lies, vices, and confusion have successfully overtaken the natural order of society. Miguel's relationship with his family was in tatters later following his move to New York and the discovery of his partner, Robert. Miguel was never asked by his sister to be a godfather and was kept away from his nieces and nephews. His sister, in an interview with her daughter, the filmmaker, said,
"He took it personally. He took it as a personal rejection of him. He was ignorant because I never felt that clearly the black and white thing that she did. I was never totally sure that homosexuality was a sin. But at the same time, I had to protect my child. It was just in case."
Rejection from Miguel's nuclear family was largely affected by the relatives' unwillingness to change. Instead of confronting their beliefs, they believed it was Miguel's fault that he was not happy. They chose not to try to understand his position within society, and as a result, participated in homophobia against him. Cecilia Aldorando, the filmmaker, further supports this sentiment by showing an unsettling letter to her mother from Miguel. It said,
Dear sister, love is not spiteful, contemptuous, or defiant. You can't let it trickle now and then, withholding it as punishment for not being normal. The truth of the matter is that if you loved me wholeheartedly, you would be mocking everything you stand for. So if you say that you love me despite the fact that I'm gay, and despite the fact that I won't go along with your religious beliefs, then you're saying your love is incomplete. And believe me, I don't love you despite anything. Though honestly, I still resent the fact that I was never asked to be a godparent to one of your children. And we both know why.
This letter to Lourdes is extremely important in figuring out Miguel's point of view and position on his family's dynamics. It's apparent that he was frustrated with his family's closed-mindedness and how he became ostracized because of his love for another man, which was perceived as a selfish choice by his family. Miguel's relatives and family friends throughout the documentary claim to love Miguel, but that is the Miguel they have constructed in their minds, the Miguel whose sexuality is never confronted. They constantly praise how he was a happy, fun, and talented individual. But Miguel challenges his family, expressing that they do not love him wholeheartedly, because if they did, he wouldn't be spurned for being a gay man. It's safe to say that Miguel was surrounded by religion growing up, considering his mother's radio show, his sister's sentiments vocalized in her response to his unsent letter, and by analyzing a census that captures the religiosity of Puerto Rico. In this 2007 census, Puerto Rican religiosity consisted of an 85% Catholic majority. It's been studied and proven that a strong correlation exists among Puerto Rican young adults and the relationship with religion. Given Christianity's stance on homosexuality as a sinful lifestyle, it is not surprising to find a strong negative association between religiosity and sexual prejudice. This can be seen in the documentary Memories of a Penitent Heart, where Lourdes kept Miguel away from her children in case homosexuality was a sin. Lastly, the participants who had the most positive exposure with homosexuals were most likely to view them in a positive and accepting light versus those who had negative experiences and few interactions with them. This data is corroborated by Cecilia Aldorado's analysis. Carmen, Miguel's mother, made the choices she made. She is herself a product of colonial thinking, of Catholicism being one of the most important factors in Puerto Rican life. They're not just individuals making free choices, in other words. They are a product of the social norms and the expectations that surround them, and sometimes they can even transcend them. Memories of a Penitent Heart shows how Miguel was impacted by the expectations of his community and family, which rejected him due to their fundamentalist Catholic conceptualization of homosexuality. Aldorando connects this to Puerto Rico's colonialist past and connections with the oppressor's religion. Miguel's circumstance and struggle is vocalized by Aldorando when she questions,
How can you know who you are if the place where you're coming from doesn't even know what it is?
It's vital in this analysis to add, how can you know who you are if you're not accurately represented or accepted where you come from? Miguel's death brought little to no clarity in his plight for acceptance. His mother proudly claims he repented before he succumbed to cancer, yet another half-truth from the fact that he died of AIDS. Documentaries like these challenge the role fantasy plays and how it contradicts reality. How does the fantasy created surrounding Miguel's death take away from his life and his memory? Who is protected, who profits, and who suffers from this lie? Miguel's identity is thus stripped from him, and the last word falls on Carmen, who thought that her lie would save the lasting memory of her son, even if it meant changing how he wanted to be remembered and concealing who he truly was. Puerto Rico still has a long way to go in the pursuit of acceptance, inclusion, and implementation of protections for LGBTQ on the island. For example, in 2013, the religious right staged an anti-LGBTQ protest which numbered 200,000 participants, one of the largest movements against queer people in a United States territory. Life as an LGBTQ person in Puerto Rico remains challenging. Trans Puerto Ricans face even more severe struggles than cis community members, and that is reflected through the footage captured by documentarians Antonio Santini and Dan Sickles in their 2014 film Mala Mala. IMDb. Mala Mala, Berger, Santini, and Sickles follows the intersecting stories of trans Puerto Ricans and documents the historic way for a local LGBTQ community with the enactment of Law 238/2014 in 2013, which prevents sexual and gender discrimination in the workplace. Trans activists such as Ivana Fred, one of the trans women interviewed for film, fights tirelessly to win uphill battles to secure rights for trans individuals. Although this is a momentous achievement, not all people in Mala Mala benefited equally from the ruling. The variety of perspectives taken out of the Puerto Rican, trans, and gender nonconforming population helps flesh out Mala Mala, rendering it one of the most progressive LGBTQ documentaries at its time of release. The term Mala Mala has been used as a term in some of the island's queer circles and implies a mental state, an attitude, a pose, a lifestyle, a subculture, a status, a non-desired identification, a way of being a shameless person, or a bad subject. Mala Mala could be considered the opposite of fabulous, a word that is used as a replacement for loca, faggot, or perra, bitch, in LGBTQ vernacular. It refers to those on the fringe of society, the populations often ignored by mainstream media, but embraced by works such as Mala Mala. Mala Mala features a rather diverse cast of trans people ranging from drag queens to activists to sex workers. Although many viewers have criticized the film for including cis perspectives in place of trans voices, it can be argued that those interviewed for the documentary do not fall under the oppressor category. Trans and gender nonconforming identities are considered more nebulous in Puerto Rico, and the lines between them are culturally blurred. From a contemporary perspective, we can try to examine the identities in the film as transcending cisness due to the growing understanding of non-binary genders. In the 5 years that have passed since Mala Mala's release, more strides have been made in Puerto Rico's legal system, which benefit trans individuals, such as the groundbreaking decision in 2018, overturning a ban which denied trans people the right to change the gender marker on their birth certificate. However, a 2019 assessment found that transgender and gender nonconforming people continue to experience suboptimal health care, social exclusion, and a lower quality of life in Puerto Rico. 67.4% of trans and GNC Puerto Ricans reported discrimination at work, and 88.5% of them reported that access to gender-affirming healthcare was difficult, suggesting that while LGBTQ activism has made great progress, there is still work to be done. However, there are still major obstacles in the way of achieving better qualities of life. A more harrowing statistic, that 1 in 4 trans people experience physical violence, reminds us that there is a long road ahead of trans activists in Puerto Rico. A major theme in Mala Mala is that Puerto Rico is an island of motion, conveyed through images of people running, walking, driving, and moving. In many ways, this can apply to the bodies within the film, as being trans is an active process, but it also describes the territory itself. Lawrence LaFountain-Strokes writes in his essay, Being Mala Mala, Documentary Film and the Cultural Politics of Puerto Rican Drag and Trans Identities, that Mala Mala portrays Puerto Rico as a mobile nation. He includes the perspective of anthropologist Jorge Duani, who said that the islands are marked by va-y-ven, back and forth. The migratory patterns of those featured in the film suggest that Puerto Rico lacks some of the resources trans and gender nonconforming seek. Many of them have traveled to the United States or nations within Latin America. These migrations occur for a variety of reasons, whether it may be career opportunities, such as in the case of April, a drag queen, or to pursue access to medical transition. Many trans people in Puerto Rico struggle to access medical procedures necessary to transition, including testosterone, which Pax, a trans man, cannot find on the island.
Possible way ahora mismo en Puerto Rico que me puedan dar testosterone, como que no hay T, period. Como que me tengo que ir de fucking Puerto Rico. Eso está un poquito arriba.
Another interviewee, Samantha Close, moved to Tennessee because of her dissatisfaction with her doctors. Mala Mala documents trans and gender nonconforming experiences and the impact of their surrounding community on their lives. The constant struggle of existing as an LGBTQ person looms like a dark cloud over the Puerto Ricans featured in the film, and it portrays the island as a largely conservative but slowly changing environment which challenges more than it nurtures. The constant struggle of existing as an LGBTQ person looms like a dark cloud over the Puerto Ricans featured in the film, and it portrays the island as a largely conservative but slowly changing environment which challenges more than it nurtures. The documentary portrays Puerto Rico as a transit hub for queer journeys, which may take them off of the island. Similarly to Miguel, who left to pursue a less constrained life in New York, many LGBTQ Puerto Ricans travel to find environments which provide them with many different opportunities and resources. Can Puerto Rico become a place where the LGBTQ community thrives, or will Puerto Ricanos continue to feel pressure to leave the island due in part to homophobic and transphobic sentiment? While political activism in Puerto Rico lags behind the mainland in many ways, battles are still being won. One major victory for LGBTQ Puerto Ricans was the 2018 veto of the Religious Freedom Bill, which would have allowed legal discriminations against LGBTQ people. Puerto Rico Governor Ricardo Rosselló wrote in a letter to the Puerto Rican Senate President Thomas Rivera that the bill has raised serious concerns and distractions that could cause the violation of rights of portions of our society and even limit our population's access to public services. Despite this, LGBTQ Puerto Ricans survive on the islands and find ways to embrace the island's culture while existing as a marginalized group. The comic, Puerto Rico's LGBT Community is Ready to Kick the Door Down, describes Rosa Colon's experience as a gay Puerto Rican and the meaningful positive representation of LGBTQ individuals in Puerto Rican media. She writes about the character Guille, featured in the television comedy Entrando por la Cocina, which aired in the late 1980s. Colon claims that the sitcom criticized societal homophobia and that Guille was an empowering character who publicly expressed his sexuality during the height of the AIDS crisis. While she still notes that LGBTQ rights in Puerto Rico are heavily challenged by the public, especially by fundamentalist religious groups, she believes that there is still progress being made on the island. Colon concludes, the religious right is locked in a tug-of-war with the gay community on the island. But no matter how many times they try, gay Boricuas will continue to kick the door down, pink boombox in hand, ready to steal the spotlight. Media, in many ways, reflects the social climate of society. Records of personal experiences can become transformed through the visual arts, creating an intimate retellings of stories which in turn impact the culture they are connected to. The dramatized narratives in Mala Mala and Memories of a Penitent Heart offer a glimpse into the lives of LGBTQ Puerto Ricans, shaping the audience's understanding of the island region. Comics, such as Kicking the Door Down, further underline the importance of representation in the entertainment we consume. It offers a personal account of a young person coming to terms with their sexuality and the fight to become recognized as her authentic self. Activist work in Puerto Rico is a long way to go, but visual media can demonstrate the victories over the community. Mala Mala, Memories of a Penitent Heart, and Kicking the Door Down celebrate the vivacity of queer experiences in the territory, which is among the most accepting out of the Caribbean islands, even if it wasn't always as such. They demonstrate that Puerto Ricans can survive in the face of oppression, and they convey the hardships of life in the closet and the rewards of breaking free.
Those exposed to AIDS.
It was a family war. He had to argue with my mother all the time. She wanted to save his soul.
She wanted him dead. She was happier that he was dead than he was alive.
When he was dying, he had his arms spread out like he was crucified.
How does it feel to die? How does it feel to have your life slipped away from you and your mother telling you one thing, and your lover being there on the other side?
Más nunca yo hubiera pensado en sacar una cosita que pudiera mancillar la familia. Yo no lo haría.